Good evening. My name is Marisa Bono, Chief Strategic Officer at Via Metropolitan Transit. Oprima estrella cero ahora para escuchar en español. Thank you for joining our live interactive town hall as we host an open and timely conversation about Via's response to the global coronavirus pandemic and the agency's long-term plans as an essential service for San Antonio. This event and others will give us a chance to speak directly with you and answer as many of your questions live as possible. Otra vez, Oprima estrella cero, ahora para escuchar en español. For our phone participants, we'd like to invite you to live stream by clicking the Get Involved button at viareimagine.com. So with me this evening, I have Jeff Arndt, President and CEO of Via, and Tremell Brown, Vice President of Safety Training and System Security. Jeff and Tramel, thanks for being with us here this evening.
It's a pleasure, and I want to wish you, Marisa, and everybody a happy Cinco de Mayo.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Marisa. And thank you too, Marisa, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon.
Thank you for being with us. So as I mentioned, this is an interactive forum, and we want to hear from all of you. We'll be taking as many questions from participants as we possibly can live this evening on tonight's event. Oprima estrella cero ahora para escuchar en español. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your phone keypad at any time, and you will be placed in line to speak with a member of our staff. And if you're streaming the event on the website, just type your name and question below your live streaming player. Jeff, would you like to address our participants before we dive into questions?
Well, certainly, first of all, as I said, I wish everyone a happy Cinco de Mayo, and I hope that you are, this is a unique one, isn't it? I hope that everyone is staying safe and abiding by the directives we've gotten from people who are far wiser than me about how to protect our health. We're very happy that Via is able to provide service and connections to not only the essential workers, but to anyone who needs to make essential trips. And so we've gotten emails and calls from people that have said, thank you. I work at Walmart and I don't know how I'd get there if I didn't have Via. And we've had people say, thank you. I don't know how I would have gotten my groceries if it hadn't been for Via. So we are delighted that we are able to serve the community during this time.
Thanks for that, Jeff. You know, I haven't been with Via for very long, but I've just been incredibly moved by how the Via family has come together and really put the needs of our city and the health and the safety of our community first. And I'm incredibly proud to work with our bus operators and our maintenance staff who are really at the front lines trying to keep our community safe. So thank you, Tramel. Your team is just doing an incredible job. So let's go ahead and take.
So Marisa, I would like to recognize Tramel, frankly. Excuse me, but I think I would like to recognize Tramel because he's been the point person for our response, and he's worked with all the departments and developed out the procedures and gotten the masks and gotten the gloves and the hand sanitizer and the plastic shields and all those things. Tramel has been so instrumental in, and so I just want to make sure that we recognize his role there.
Thank you, Jeff. There's a great collection of women and men that have assisted with this, including our operators and maintenance employees as well. But thank you for that.
Thanks to both of you. And our first question has come in from Jessica on Facebook. And the question is, have there been any changes at Via in response to the COVID-19 pandemic? Tramel, why don't you start us off with that one?
Hi, and Jessica, thank you for that good question. There's been a number of safe service changes since the pandemic began. Some of those things include the step increased sanitizing that happens on the buses and the touching of high touch areas throughout our service area, on our vehicles and our facilities. We've also equipped our operators with gloves and other forms of PPE, like facial coverings, antimicrobial wipes for their compartment area, as well as thermal checks have taken place now for all employees. Our operators get their temperature checked prior to starting service each day, as well as plastic sheeting that you may have noticed on some of our buses. That's just to help facilitate a safer environment for our operators while customers come on. Right now, we're in a free fare situation where customers can just board the vehicle and walk right on by and have a seat. That also runs into our social distancing practices that hopefully, if you've ridden recently, you've noticed on the buses that we've done to maintain as a safe distance of at least 6 feet between our customers so they can have a safe trip to their destination.
Would you like to add anything to that, Jeff?
Well, first of all, and to append what Tramel had to say, all employees at VIA have their temperatures checked every day as they come into the facility, and it's before they are actually in the facility. And so the bus operators, for example, as they're coming to the parking lot, will have their temperature checked, and if the temperature is above 100.4, we'll ask that employee to return home and self-monitor, contact healthcare professional. But it does two things. One is that when the operators are all getting ready, they're all gathered in a room, and we've worked hard to encourage social distancing even under those circumstances. Even with masks, we encourage that. But it's best not to have somebody who's running a fever in the middle of that group, nor do we want somebody who may be ill or coming down ill driving the bus and exposing the customers to that. So that's a really big a point we've made. You see here the people who are cleaning the buses. We have always, of late at least, since I've been here, cleaned the buses using an antimicrobial sanitizer every night. So every bus that goes out each morning has been sanitized, not just since this started, but well before this started. We have people who are making extra efforts in the field to wipe down the buses when they come into transit centers, so that, again, we're trying to take extra steps to make sure that we provide as safe an environment as we possibly can. And I want to say something about the fares, because that often comes up, Marisa. The fares were suspended in order to allow people to board the bus and not have to dwell at the fare box, touch the fare box, and then have the person behind touch. And it's a very high touch point, and we wanted people to not have to do that. It's also a point where people tended to bunch up, because if somebody was putting dollar bills in or change in, it would slow the boarding a bit, and people would get bunched up. Again, we didn't want the bunching up of people. And then it's done right in proximity to the bus operator. And so we did not want people dwelling in proximity to the bus operator. So there were all these different safety points to not collecting fares. It was not to encourage ridership. It was to provide a safe environment. Marisa, I believe you're muted.
Still getting adjusted to this new format. I was just saying, if there's anything that has been consistent about this situation, it's that it's constantly evolving and changing every day. So VIA has actually set up a link on our website. It's viainfo.net/COVID-19. And there, every day you can get updates about our response to the pandemic and what we're doing to keep our team and the community safe. And again, for our phone participants, we had a question about how to watch this live stream. You can watch this presentation live stream if you're calling in by phone by clicking the Get Involved button at viareimagine.com. So go to viareimagine.com and hit the Get Involved button. Otra vez, oprime estrella cero ahora para escuchar en español. And again, just a reminder to everyone, this is an interactive forum. We want to hear your questions. We want to take your questions live. So if you have a question, press *3 on your keypad at any time to get into the queue to ask a question. A member of our staff will collect your questions, screen your call. We'll answer as many as we can during this live event. Again, you can press *3 on your keypad anytime to get into the queue to ask a question. And if you're participating online, just leave your question with your name below the streaming player. So let's go ahead and go live to our first caller. And we have Sandra Padilla on the line. And Sandra, go ahead. You're live.
Yes, thank you. My question is, I'm a person in a wheelchair, and I require an attendant to travel with me. What are the requirements for me to ride on the Via Trans all over again?
Okay.
Sandra, if I understand your question, are you asking if you can travel on Via Trans with an assistant or a helper?
Yes. And what are the requirements since you have that 6 feet away from another person? How does that work?
Understood. Jeff, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So the first general comment is that as long as you are qualified to use Via Trans, and that involves the certification process. So if you've not gone through the certification process, and I'm going to speak generally, then you can go onto the website viainfo.net and find the certification for the form that one sends to be certified. But once one is in that system, you are allowed always to bring an attendant. You simply have to, as you make the reservation for the trip, you have to make sure that you make them aware that you will have an attendant. Today, to preserve social distancing, we have limited the number of passengers, or trips, I should say, that we carry to 1 per vehicle. So if you had an attendant, it would be you and your attendant on that van. And within that van, there is plenty of room for you and your attendant to be situated with proper social spacing. But that is the reason, in fact, why we are right now limiting Via Trans to only 1 person trip, if you will, in order to preserve that opportunity.
I understand. Would that make it a longer delay to return back home?
The question, Sandra, if I can make sure we understand, is if are there going to be delays on Via Trans as a result of our new protocol for the pandemic?
Yes.
No, there are not. Partly because the number of Via Trans trips we are currently carrying is about 70% less than usual, and so we have certainly sufficient equipment and drivers, operators, to provide the same level of service that we always do.
Thank you, Sandra, for your call. And it's just really hits home the point that there are so many in our community who don't have access to transit without Via. And during a time when folks need to be getting to the grocery store, need to be getting to where they need to be, it seems like, it's very important for us to keep that balance between safety, but also offering a service that's essential. Okay, everyone, we want to hear from you. I'm going to do a quick poll question now, but for those of you who just joined us, this is a live interactive event. So if you have a question, you can hit *3, or if you're watching the presentation live stream, you can leave your comment with your name underneath underneath your live stream player. And so our first poll question here is, do you consider Via services essential for San Antonio? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 not sure. And again, the question is, do you consider Via services essential for San Antonio? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no, and press 3 for not sure. And while we tally up those poll results, I'm going to go to another live caller. Vicki Nolan has a question about our bus schedule. Vicki, go ahead, you're live.
Wondering if you all are going to return to normal schedule after the pandemic, because I've noticed the bus that I ride a lot is 6:47, and I noticed that you've changed the time to a Sunday schedule. Currently, I'm on furlough from my job, so I was wondering if it was going to go back to normal.
I would say absolutely it will. The only reason we're running a Sunday schedule right now is based upon 2 factors. One is the reduced number of trips that are being made in the system, and 2 is the availability of operators, because our bus operators, like everyone else, are subject to, the COVID-19. And so we have a larger number of bus operators who are not available for work right now. Nonetheless, we are able to make all the service, the fixed route service and the Via Trans service. And I would also note that in the fixed route service, that we've done two sets of service changes, and the most recent one was to try and balance things. And so some routes went to a Sunday schedule, some routes stayed on the Saturday schedule that they were running before, and some routes did return to something more or exactly like their regular weekday service like we had run before the pandemic. And as ridership returns, we'll be shifting the service back to where it was.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Vicki. And on that note, Vicki's question was consistent with a lot of the feedback we've been getting here at the agency. Folks who rely on our service but have been affected by the reduction in service. And so not surprisingly, as we look at the response to our first poll question, the question was whether Via services were essential for San Antonio, and over 90% of respondents answered yes to that question. We had about 5% answer no, and 3% said not sure. And so I think that just underscores the fact that this is a service that folks rely on. I'm going to go ahead and go to our next live caller now. Charles Gruff has a question about the future of transit for Via. Charles, go ahead, you're live.
Yes, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. Question one, how long is the Via Trans service going to continue to deliver food? Because that's been useful to a lot of people. And two, is this going to affect the long-term plan for Via? The only other question I wanted to ask, and it's the third one, and I'm sorry I didn't give it to the operator, it came from my doctor. For customers that are dependent on Via Trans, if they're suspected of having the coronavirus, is Via doing anything to work with the city so that there's another method of transportation available to us that doesn't expose like your operators or people that subsequently have to take the Via Trans or the regular bus?
Thank you for that question, Charles. Jeff, why don't you start with the first part of that question, and then maybe Tremell, you can.
Yeah, Tremell can. Okay, so help me out with the first question was?
The first question was, is Via Trans going to continue the food delivery service you guys started up?
Right. So the food delivery service is being done with Via Trans vans and Via Trans operators because, as I said before, about 75% of the service that we normally would run is not being run. And we foresee assisting the food bank up until the point in which those vehicles and drivers are needed to deliver Via Trans service, because people are back at the workshops or people back at the daycares or whatever that are currently closed and keeping them from riding. So as long as we are in a circumstance where people are not going out as much and our ridership is where it is, we fully intend to continue assisting the food bank. And in fact, I just brag on Via staff a bit today. We had about a dozen Via staffers go out to Traders Village and assist with assembling the food and then distributing it to, I guess, something like 2,700 families this morning. So we took a little extra effort with the food bank today, but we'll continue to support them on a daily basis with Via Trans. Then the second question, and y'all all promise to jot them down from now on.
It's no problem. The second question was whether or not how we're going to handle customers who are suspected of having the virus. So I suppose these are folks who maybe have symptoms, or perhaps they've been tested and they're waiting on results.
I'll lead off, and then I will hand to Tremell. And so we in everything we publish, we say that if you are ill, then the bus or Via Trans are not the places for you because, again, we need to protect the health and well-being of the other passengers and the operator. But Tramel has been, as I said, very active, not only in Via's respective Via, but also working with the city and other entities in the Emergency Management Center. And so, Tramel, I'll pass it to you now.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. And that's a great question. As Jeff had mentioned, even the CDC recommends that if you are COVID positive or you are symptomatic, that public transportation is not the option for you. Some of the things that have been circulating throughout the city is people have been contacting the city of San Antonio about transportation options. They've been able to help and assist with some of those needs. What's more important is not only your welfare, but the welfare of our other customers and riders and getting where they're going to safely. So if I understood correctly, and if you are a current Via Trans rider, if you have any other follow-up questions on that, you can feel free to ask at the time of reservation. They've got resource information for you as well that can help you with your trip. But first and foremost, if you are feeling symptomatic, the best thing for you to do is stay at home and contact a medical physician or practitioner and then follow those instructions versus trying to use the transportation system.
Thank you for that, Tramel. I have another question here from Michael, who has another question about our current and perhaps future bus service. Michael, go ahead, you're live.
Yeah, I basically have a question about outlying service. I've ridden Via for a long, long time, pretty much since the 70s, on and off, not having a car. And I've always found it interesting how Via makes their routes due to ridership, but it's kind of hard to ride a bus that isn't there. I've been wondering why we don't have service frequently out to Selma or out to Universal City. I guess that's tax bases, but what about New Braunfels? What about the Lone Star rail service that was supposed to be starting up a few years back? What's the situation on getting up to Austin and other places that are kind of considered now metro area San Antonio?
Okay, I'll start with that. The first thing I would say is Via provides transit service within the service area in which the 1/2 cent MTA sales tax is collected. And so that is most of Bexar County, but none outside Bexar County. And there are areas such as Universal City that are not members of the Via community, and we do not provide service to those areas. Now, with respect to New Braunfels, interestingly enough, New Braunfels receives actually Alamo area of Alamo or ART, which is a rural provider, had served New Braunfels for a number of years, and New Braunfels ended up, as you noted, actually officially part of the San Antonio urbanized area, and therefore they were no longer eligible for that service. Via takes a piece of its sales tax that comes through the federal government. I'm sorry, a piece of the federal grant that comes through, and we allocate that to the service for New Braunfels. So we make sure that continues to be able to be served. As far as service to Austin, that I think is going to require a completely different kind of structure and particularly funding. The funding we receive essentially is used to provide the services on the street. We do not have a large amount of excess funding that would allow us to, for example, run a service to Austin and back. Not that there's not a need for that service. And in fact, as the 35 corridor develops out, and you've seen recently that TxDOT has provided additional fundings for the 35 corridor, there will be lanes that are available for HOVs, high occupancy vehicles, which are buses and carpools. And from the north side, from the Austin side, they're similarly going to have those kinds of lanes. And so it's going to be a matter of how we kind of bridge those two physical improvements to then explore perhaps some kind of high frequency or reasonable frequency bus service. I'd also say that in the suburban areas, in the outlying areas, and while Universal City is not within our service area, there are outlying areas that are within the service area. We had two approaches. One is park and ride and express type services. For example, the Stone Oak Park and Ride or the service from Brook City Base are two examples where we have nonstop service from a parking area in both areas or from a transit center at the south, nonstop service into the downtown, and then it continues on. That's the one thing. The second thing is something that we have, I believe, just finished experimenting with, and we've now declared it a regular service to that extent. And that is when you hear about Via Link service. And so the transit community has really struggled to find a way to effectively serve the kind of development that we have in most suburban communities, with discontinuous streets and gated communities and fairly low density and fairly limited number of streets on which to operate. And so it's always been a struggle to serve those communities well. On the northeast side of our service area, we had 3 bus routes that ran once an hour. Not a very attractive service, but once an hour. So we took those services out, and we took the dollars that we were spending to provide those services, and we replaced it with a service we call Via Link. And Via Link are essentially vans that are on demand. So it's a general public on-demand service. You can almost think of it as something like Lyft or Uber within a Via environment. So there's an app and you book the trip, or you can call and ask for the trip and you get the information. The average response time to a call is less than 10 minutes, as opposed to that 60-minute wait we'd had for the bus before. You'll get information about the vehicle and the driver when they arrive. When you get to your location, you'll be asked to score that trip and to leave comments. And we look at those regularly, and it's amazing what you can see, and you can note whether we have perhaps a van operator who has a need for some refresher training. That's what we can get through those customer comments. What that does then is allow people anywhere within this 17-mile area that we've designated. They can go anywhere with any 2 points within that area, as opposed to only along the route that previously served them. And then they can also, at Naco Pass, there always was a connection for the other 3 bus routes into the remainder of the system, into the line haul services. And the Via Link service also allows those vans to come and let people connect. And about half of the people that ride Via Link are staying within their community, and about half are making that transfer. So we're looking at all different ways to serve different patterns of development, different densities throughout our service area, and to best utilize the 1/2 cent that we have available.
It looks like we've had a number of questions about both Via Link, Jeff, and also about requests for having smaller vehicles pick up people to take them to the main routes or take them to the main transit centers. Shirley, thank you for that question. Via Link has been a really successful program for Via. If you're interested in learning more about our plans to hopefully extend smart transit options like Via Link, you can check out our plan at viareimagine.com. And folks, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Marisa, I was going to say that, and kind of in response to those questions, so we have this 117 square mile area that we piloted in, but in our Via Reimagine plan, we have a wide swath of areas in which we would run similar service. Typically, these areas are outside or just inside 1604 based upon development patterns. So that's the one way in which we're looking at using Via Link. And then the second way, which we still need to experiment with, so we don't know for certain how well this would work, but that in major activity centers, so let's just take the medical center, that we have a lot of bus service that goes through there, and we have a major transit center, a major hub. But when you get to the hub, then you have to figure out how to get from the hub to where I'm going. As you know, our medical center is laid out in a somewhat suburban fashion. The buildings are set back, and so when you get to the bus stop, you still have quite a ways to go sometimes to get the front door of where you're trying to go. And so we're looking at the opportunity to try Via Link in an environment like that, where at the transit center, you would be able to book a direct connection to whatever facility you're going to, and that vehicle, again, because it's smaller, is able to go to the front door. So again, another enhancement of service. So those are the two ways in which we're looking at using these smaller vehicles to deliver service.
Thank you for that. And folks, just a reminder, this is an interactive forum. If you have questions, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time to get in the queue. And if you're participating online, you can submit your question below the streaming player. If you are streaming from via reimagine.com, you may want to submit a question. You have to press your tab button to bring up the submit button. I don't have it in front of me here. Hope that makes sense to you folks out there. Tramel, I have a question online for you from Rodney, and he asks, what are you doing to promote physical distancing at the bus stops, the transit centers, and during boarding?
So a great question, Rodney. As we mentioned before, social distancing is something we've worked hard to try to maintain. It's easier to see on the buses because we have signage that's available for our customers in the different seating areas. We have removed seating in different locations at the front to create social distancing, not only for the operator, but for those who may sit up front. We've also made an adjustment to two of the locations up front, so there's even more space for people to walk, congregate, and move throughout the vehicle and maintain their distance away from other customers. When it comes to our transit facilities, you'll find there is markings and stickers and things of that nature on the ground in different areas, reminding people to maintain social distancing of 6 feet on the inside and the outside of the facility. And even bus stops, there's times where you'll see some of our supervisors will go by and share that message along with them. What we've seen is a lot of people have done well to follow the city's leaderships, their mandates and recommendations for social distancing and just safe transport and travel throughout the city, as well as the governor's mandates. And we're proud to see that. And our operators have done well to just remind customers in a gentle way to maintain social distancing when they can and be safe when they exit the vehicle as well. So there's a holistic approach to being sure that regardless of where you're at, whether in our vehicles or at our facilities, you'll see the reminders that encourage people not only follow what the CDC recommends, but also local civic leadership as well.
Thank you for that, Tramel. And I have a follow-up question here also related to safety. This question is from Santos. It came to us online. He says, I have been a rider since the 1980s and your service is great. Thank you for that. The governor of Texas has said that masks are optional now. How long will we have to wear masks when riding VIA?
What I can tell you is as we move forward and continue to evaluate and adjust to sometimes what seems like updates that may come every 48 to 72 hours, we constantly take a look at how we can provide better service. And as you're mentioning of the facial coverings, we're still following some of the same measures that have proven successful. And that's just reminding people to wear facial coverings when using our service and being in the vehicle. One of the things that was mentioned throughout the city is that if you are out in public and unable to maintain a 6-foot distance, then facial coverings are something that you should be wearing. And we're just still continuing to follow suit with that. I know changes happen from our local civic leaders and from the state throughout the week, and we actively stay engaged and move in the same direction, stride as they do. But our number one goal is safety. And for that, we know even with the CDC that the recommendation of facial coverings has a benefit to it. And at this time, we're still continuing that measure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just wanted to reinforce that. We encourage social distancing on the bus. We only allow 16 passengers on a bus. And once we get to 16, we're going to pass people up and send another vehicle, obviously, but we're not going to go above 16. So that's to encourage and to provide the opportunity for spacing. But the opportunity for spacing doesn't guarantee that you're going to have spacing. It doesn't guarantee that someone else on that bus isn't going to decide that they're going to sit closer to you than maybe you might prefer. And the mask is that added level, if you will, because we can't guarantee that you'll be able to maintain a 6-foot spacing. If everyone has a mask on that bus, then everyone is protecting everyone else. The minute somebody comes in without a mask, now that person can be exposing others. And so we want to make sure that that environment stays safe for everybody on that bus. And so if someone doesn't have a mask, we'll end up sending a supervisor out with a mask if we can get one, we gather one. Our desire is that people have a mask and they get to where they go. And so we're going to try our very best to facilitate that.
Thank you. And as both Jeff and Tramel have mentioned, we recognize this is a rapidly changing situation. And so to stay up to date, we want to make sure our riders know what to expect. You can visit viainfo.net/COVID-19 to stay up to date on what we're doing here at VIA. And I'm going to go to another live call now. Looks like another question about social distancing. So Heather, go ahead, you're now live.
Hello?
You're live.
Hi. Hi, my name's Heather. I was just saying that VIA was doing good in its service, and I really would like to see VIA come up and after this pandemic, because we do need VIA with San Antonio, and I think y'all are doing good with the COVID. Even with the COVID pandemic going on, I see good results. And with the pandemic going on, also, y'all even gave us a month free. So I thought that was cool, too. That's all I got to say. My name is Heather Roque. So thank you, VIA. And I was overhearing everybody's
Thank you for that, Heather.
Thank you.
Hey, Heather, you know what? You reminded me of the third question that we skipped, the gentleman with the 3 questions. There was a third piece of that, and you reminded me of that part. So eventually the memory does work, because I believe he asked about the future of service expansion, et cetera. And, you know, first of all, I would say that it's been very clear, this pandemic has very well demonstrated how important our service is for a swath of our community. And as people return to work, and the question earlier about will we return to our previous service level, every intention to do that, and I have every reason to believe that we'll need to do that, because people, you know, the service industry is really hard hit. The downtown hotels, for example, they're a large client base, they're a large ridership base for us, and as those folks are ready to return to work, they're going to need transit that they used before to get back in. And as people are trying to deal with the financial stress that this has created in many households, the economics and the cost savings that you can accrue through riding VIA will become more and more meaningful. So I think that even in the short term, I think that's what's going to happen. The question that the gentleman asked about was more like the longer term, I know. And we had, before the pandemic, spoken a great deal about our VIA Reimagined plan. Right now, we're not speaking about it a great deal because we are so busy trying to make sure that people know what service we're running when. We've been making these changes to adapt to you shouldn't wear masks. No, you should wear masks. No, you may wear masks. And all these kinds of changes. We're completely absorbed with that. And frankly, I don't think the public's interest is going to be all that high at this moment to hear about VIA Reimagined, but it will be as we emerge. And we will be right back discussing the benefits of transit and our long-range plan that includes higher frequency on many bus lines, more direct services, advanced rapid transit lines that get people places quicker, and then the application of technology to improve our service and to implement services like the VIA Link service I was talking about. We are still fully committed to VIA Reimagined.
Thank you for that, Jeff. We are getting a lot of questions about when are we going to extend service to outlying areas? When are we going to implement late night service? When are we going to create more frequent routes? And viareimagined.com is a place to learn more about those answers. We're trying to focus on COVID response this evening, but for those who would like more details, it's viareimagined.com. And I'm going to go ahead and take us now to our next poll question. You can enter your answers in through your telephone keypad. And the question is, what matters most to you as you commute around San Antonio? Press 1 for affordability. Press 2 for convenience, press 3 for safety, press 4 for how long it takes. Again, the question is, what matters most to you as you commute? 1 for affordability, 2 for convenience, 3 for safety, 4 for how long it takes. And while we tally up those poll results, just want to remind everyone that this is an interactive forum. If you have a question, press *3 on your keypad at any time. If you're participating online, you can submit your question below the streaming player. And we'll go ahead and go to our next question while we're tallying up those poll results. And I have a caller here, Robin, who has a question about our free fares. Robin, go ahead, you're live.
Yes, good evening, both of you. I just want to first commend you all, and I think it's very nice of VIA being considerate and compassionate for their fellow man. VIA has extended the fares twice. This last extension will end the 17th of this month. I would like to know, will VIA extend free fares beyond the 17th of this month?
So I would like to know that too, in this respect, that we are responding to a situation that seems to change daily. And so if I could tell where the city would be, where the city would be and where COVID-19 was, by the middle of the month, I could give you a better answer. I just want you to know that, as I said, the primary reason we eliminated fares was to protect the safety and well-being of the passengers. Certainly, it's a wonderful thing that it's helpful to people, especially, as I said, a lot of economic stress out there. And so that's going to be our guiding principle, is where is the world as we approach that time? And so if the question is, might it be extended? The answer to that is yes, it might be extended depending on those circumstances.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And I have the results of our second poll here. The question was, what matters most to you as you commute around San Antonio? 19% of our participants said affordability matters most. 33% said convenience matters most. 24% said safety, and 24% responded with how long it takes. So thanks for participating in our second poll question. I'm going to go ahead and go to our next caller. And the question is coming from, sorry, looks like I have a little glitch here. Okay, the question is coming from Molly, and she has a question. Looks like this one might be for you, Tramel. A question about the use of our transit centers and homelessness. Go ahead, Molly, you're on live.
Yes, hi, thank you for taking my question. Somebody said about going back to normal. Although I do applaud VIA and how you're doing things, I was really happy that you made everything free, because it gave the homeless people opportunity to, although they don't have a home to stay home at, like the mayor's asking, so they're at least able to take refuge on the bus if they can. But as a homeless advocate, I'm hoping that things do not go back to normal. I'm hoping that VIA, as a way to apologize for the constant harassment toward the homeless people by Allied Security and the Allied Security contractor, the other company, whatever it's called, will hopefully open its transit centers that are empty at night to allow homeless people to access the bathroom facilities and a place to sleep outside, social distancing, of course, under the safety of your watchful eye security who watches all night, and the safe, well-lit parking rides that you can open up to people who sleep in their cars, and then possibly advertising this to people that find that kind of need essential pre and post COVID-19. But I really, really do applaud.
Marisa, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Molly. Sorry to cut you off. We were running a little bit short on time, but I think we, first of all, heard your praise and appreciate that. And Tramel, would you like to respond to Molly's questions about why we do or don't use our transit centers and buses as respite for the homeless during this time.
Well, and thank you, Molly, for your praise and commentary about the experiences that you've seen and heard about. You know, we started off this Tele-Town Hall talking about the importance of making connections and getting where you're going safely, and part of that also takes care at our transit centers and those facilities. And for people who are moving throughout our system and making those connections and getting to those locations that they need to for their essential trips, we have plenty of opportunities for them to use some of those amenities and make those safe connections. One of the things that I did hear you mention is that there was some concern about the way that some have been treated, and we've got resources to receive feedback on that. And you can contact 362-2020 and share any of those experiences, and we'd be glad to look into that for you. But as far as providing locations and resources that are non-transit use based, that's something we'd have to work with some of our local partners just to see what their thoughts are on improvement measures for different regions of the city. But at this time, we want to thank you for your information and thank you for your comment. But maybe this is an opportunity to have a further dialogue at a later time about some more details about some of the thoughts you had on your recommendations.
And certainly because of social distancing, we want to be wary about encouraging congregation on the buses. We're only allowing 16 at a time right now, and at our transit centers, but we do recognize the need in our community at this time. And that's why we recently unveiled a program called Via Cares. Jeff, would you like to tell our participants a little bit about that program?
Oh, absolutely. And so we've spoken a bit about one of the major pieces, which is the service that we're providing to help the food bank deliver food, something like 2,000 boxes since we started. You see that we're using a Via Trans vehicle because, as I said before, 75% of the trips are not being made right now during the pandemic. And so that frees up vehicles and drivers. And I just applaud Eric Cooper and all the people at the food bank. He had written an article in the paper. I read that article in paper. I texted him right away. I said, you know, I have drivers and vehicles. Maybe there's something we could do to help. And as it ended up, my own people already were working with the food bank to try and develop that, which is always nice when we're all moving down that same path. And so we've been able to do that. Really happy to be able to do that. The second big piece is our Wi-Fi service. So the school districts, as you know, are all teaching remotely. And this digital divide we often hear about becomes really, really evident and important at a time in which everybody is doing distance-based learning, if you will. And so we were originally approached by SAISD. Their concern being that they had students, that the students might even have a notebook from the school or whatever, but the family did not have Wi-Fi. And there were lots of stories of families that said the Wi-Fi was the first thing that had to go because food on the table or Wi-Fi, you know, it was going to be food on the table. Our vehicles have since like 2015 all been equipped with Wi-Fi. And we found that if we stationed these vans, again, strategically around developments, that the people who lived in those developments would be able to make use of Wi-Fi. So again, we worked with SAHA with respect to the housing developments, and we worked with SISD. They helped us SAISD. Between them, we had a good identification of where clusters of students were in housing developments, developed a plan out based on the number of vehicles we had available and the number of operators that we had available. We were also in partnership with the city and other school districts. And so we are every day, we're out and about with vans at a variety of locations to help make sure that the students that live at those locations are able to keep up with their schoolwork. And I'm sure the students are very grateful. And I'm sure the parents are very grateful too. So Via Cares, I'm sorry, I should continue that Via Cares has become a new standard, if you will, for connecting to our community. And so, of course, we're going to continue serving the food bank while there's a need and while we have the resources available. But we're going to be looking through time, even when we are in, quote, normal circumstances, for opportunities for VIA to support the facility beyond the very basic and fundamental and essential support we already provide in providing connections to jobs and training and health services.
Thank you for that, Jeff. And I'm going to go ahead and go now to our final poll question of the evening. And the question is, the San Antonio region needs a transit plan that improves existing bus service and offers innovation and smart transit. So press 1 if you strongly agree, 2 somewhat agree, 3 somewhat disagree, 4 strongly disagree, 5 unsure. Again, the question is, or the statement is, the San Antonio region needs a transit plan that improves existing bus service and offers innovation and smart transit. 1 for strongly agree, 2 for somewhat agree, 3 for somewhat disagree, 4 for strongly disagree, and 5 unsure. And while we're tallying those poll results, I'll go ahead and go now to Jose, who has a question about a service up in Stone Oak. Jose, go ahead, you're live.
The name is Joseph. No, Robert.
Oh, yes,
Joseph.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, you're live.
Good evening. First, please let me say that I came to this line 10 or so minutes late, so I don't know who the very knowledgeable VIA reps are. What I heard so far are very thorough and professional answers, much more than the City Mayor Interactive Forum, which unfortunately turned political and unproductive. I have been an observer of the VIA transit system, not as a passenger, but as a city driver. The VIA operators, and I mean by that the drivers, have been respectful, courteous, and safe in all my activity and experiences. Now that I am reducing my driving due to medical reason, I will be very happy to use a VIA transit system. So my question is, what is available in the Stone Oak area now and in the future? And congratulations for all that I've heard so far. It's been a very impressive and hopeful conversation. Thank you.
Well, Joseph, I hope I don't disappoint you. You set a very high standard for us, but we very much appreciate your kind comments. And I want to, and really you gave me a springboard because I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge our bus operators. And as you notice, we don't call them drivers, we call them operators, because there's a whole lot more involved in operating that bus than simply driving. And so we want to respect that higher level of professionalism, dealing with the customers, dealing with equipment, dealing with safety, all those things. And so thank you for recognizing the operators. They really are the heart and soul of VIA, along with the mechanics to keep the buses safe and clean. It takes, that's the perfect combination, a safe, clean bus with a professional operator. You should get good service out of that. So then I'll turn to Stone Oak. So Stone Oak right now has 2 primary services. There's a park and ride service from the parking lot at Stone Oak and 281. Right now, that service I think is not being operated, and the service at the Walmart down at 1604 is picking up for the area. But again, we intend to re-implement. The thing that will be interesting, Joseph, is that when 281 is finished, there will be the first HOV, high occupancy vehicle lane, in Bexar County's history will be there in 281. Now, it's only the start. So when I say there's a HOV lane, at least we have that seed that allows us to move forward. So if you take the park and ride, let's say into downtown, you would board the bus, you would travel up a ramp that would take you up to the 4th level, I believe, of the garage, to that height at least. You would travel up above the southbound lanes, and then you would dip into the center where there would be a dedicated lane in each direction for buses and other high occupancy vehicles, van pools and carpools at various levels. So that allows you to bypass traffic. Now, the first one goes to 1604, but TxDOT is diligently working at finding ways to push that at least down to the airport. So that's one piece. The second piece is we have the Huebner Crosstown, which also anchors at that park and ride. So one could park there and get on it, and it takes you all the way over to the medical center. as I said before, the Via Link type service seems to work well in kind of suburban settings, and so the Stone Oak area could be very well a potential future Via Link area, where again we could serve into the line haul service by connecting people at that park and ride where they could get the crosstown or they could get the commuter service.
Thanks for that, Jeff. And according to our final poll results, 49% of our participants strongly agree that San Antonio region needs a transit plan that improves and expands our existing service and offers innovation in smart transit. Go to viareimagine.com if you'd like to hear about our future plans. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, 68%, I stand corrected, 68% strongly agree with that statement. And again, viareimagine.com for our future plans on how to access Via in the future if you live in those outer parts of town. So we're very close to running over tonight. We're coming to the end of our live event this evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this important conversation. We appreciate the opportunity to speak directly with you and answer your questions. If you weren't able to get your question answered this evening, please leave a voicemail after the event, staying on the call when we end, and you will be transferred into our private voicemail system. Again, you can go to viainfo.net/COVID-19 for information about our pandemic response, and viareimagine.com for our plans for the future of transit, the expansion of transit and more frequent service. You can also send us an email at reimagined@viainfo.net or call our office at 210-517-4715. We're in this together, San Antonio, and we are going to keep you updated and informed. From our Via family to yours, thank you again and have a good evening.